This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Awakenings is super excited to add this new feature to each show as we welcome Dr. Glenn Swartwout, known as the Wizard of Wellness, to answer any and all health-related questions and his suggestion on how to heal it in a natural and healthy manner. Now, here is this week's health question. One physical problem that plagues many people throughout the world is a ringing sound in their ears and their head called tinnitus. What causes this ringing sound and what treatment do you suggest for this?
So the cause in Western conventional medicine, they mainly associate the cause with hearing loss about 90% of the time. But to me, that's not an answer of cause, that's an association. It means that it's doing damage. And yes, it's highly associated with loss of hearing over time when you have a chronic tinnitus issue. I'd say more the underlying root cause, as we look at it in natural medicine, is inflammation, a problem with lack of nutrition and circulation to the area, and a lack of certain nutrients. There's deficiencies of B12 and zinc are strongly associated with it. Aging related in most cases. So we know that we lose, in 40 years of aging, we lose 30% of the quality of circulation to our tissues. So decrease in quality of nutrition and detoxification of the tissues is definitely related. Now, from an Oriental medicine perspective, we get a whole additional view that to me is crucial because, again, the Western view, it's like we're just looking at the inner ear, not really thinking about the rest of the body. That's a whole other specialty, right? But in Oriental medicine, as soon as we hear tinnitus, ear problems, hearing problems, the first thing we think is, oh, what's wrong with the kidneys? Again, we wouldn't have a clue about that from Western medicine, but the ears are associated with the kidneys, like the eyes are with the liver. So we could go into depth on how that's related to other things in consciousness, but to keep it short and to the point, to have a quick answer of what's the first thing you might think of to begin to help that, to support it. What I found in measuring the acupuncture meridians for 30, 40 years is when the kidney meridian is showing stress, I was at first very surprised that maybe 90% of the time we could balance it by bringing in microbiome, a broad spectrum of the healthy flora, the beneficial bacteria that live throughout the body, but especially in the intestines. So an oral supplement of a broad spectrum microbiome. I've formulated one called Microbiome, easy to remember if you know what microbiome is. It has over 30 different species, because we should have thousands of species. And actually one of the first things that's seen before tinnitus shows up or before almost any chronic degenerative or aging related condition shows up is a loss of health and vibrance of the microbiome. It's called the second immune system. And if we think about inflammation from sort of a Western science perspective, inflammation is regulated by the immune system, and it's actually a function of the immune system in order to detoxify the tissues. So why is the immune system trying to detoxify the ears? If it's connected to the kidney meridian, the situation in the kidney. Kidneys are the main high pressure filter to clean the blood. But where do toxins come from that are in the blood? Mainly from the large intestine, and that's where the microbiome is going to act to clean up the gut so that the rest of the body, including the ears, can be happier, healthier, restore function.
Wow, what an incredible, beautiful answer. Some things that we all need to think about. If you have that issue, take a listen to what Dr. Glenn said. So we hope you enjoy this feature on natural and healthy treatments and healing with the Wizard of Wellness, Dr. Glenn Swart-Wout. Now, if you have a health issue you would like to ask Dr. Glenn, email them to me at kwgruber@yahoo.com. kwgruber@yahoo.com, and we will feature your question on an upcoming show. Also, if you would like to purchase any of Dr. Glenn's natural remedies, go to his website, remedymatch.com, and put in this code for 10% off, AWAKE, all capital letters, AWAKE, to receive the World Awakenings discount and also a free wicking toothbrush set. Aloha, beautiful people from around the world. Welcome to the show World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. The show that asks the all-important question, why now, more than ever, are the people of the world awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening? I'm your host, Carl Gruber. I am so grateful to announce that this show has just been ranked the #2 show of the top 20 metaphysical podcasts in the world. So thank you for making this possible. And by the way, not only can you catch this show on YouTube and every possible online audio-only outlet, but we are now streaming on the new TV network called New Reality TV. So check out the link in the show notes to find out how you can subscribe to New Reality TV and see World Awakenings right there. So with that, today on episode number 202, we check in with Justin Shaw, who is known as a mystical comedian, doctor of divinity, and a sorcerer passionate about empowering people to reclaim their self-worth and manifest their highest potential. Now, following a long battle with substance abuse, PTSD, depression, and anxiety disorders, Justin, a former stand-up comedian, experienced firsthand the redeeming power of source energy after an incredible experience he will never forget. Justin is author of the new book, Sourcery 101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness, a new system designed for sourcing a spiritual revolution. And by the way, Justin spells sorcery, Sourcery, and we'll find out about that in a little bit. So with that, welcome to World Awakenings, Justin.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Love it.
Oh man, I'm so grateful, man. You look like you have a pretty interesting story and a lot of beautiful things to share with the world. But my viewers know I like to establish a base with my customers and find out more about them. And whoa, man, it sounds like you've had one heck of a rough ride earlier in your life with the substance abuse, PTSD, depression, etc. Why did your earlier life follow this crazy path?
Well, yeah, that's a good that's a good starting point. So, when the household I grew up in, I believe we're all born just a clean slate, and our environments. Everyone is kind of a reflection, a walking reflection of the environment they were raised in. So, when I was growing up, I just grew up. My parents did the best job they could. They did the same job that their parents did, which was, I essentially grew up in what was an emotional vacuum. There was no discussion about anything involving feelings or emotions or any sort of sensitive subjects, anything at all. It truly was, I like to say it was like Fight Club in my household. The first rule is you don't talk about your feelings. And the second rule is you don't talk about your feelings. So it was like, and that's just how it was. There was no, communication that, I was loved or valued or important or safe or any of these things. And so when a child grows up, they now are looking to the world for love, validation, and safety. And the world is always going to tell them they are unsafe, unloved, and unvalued. So that is exactly what happened with me. And that just led to a lot of struggle. My whole 20s was just struggle. It was just drugs, alcohol, and just how do I keep this high going? So that led to a lot, that led to, I've spent nights in jails, of course, in rehabs, halfway houses, park benches. I mean, it's just, my 20s was not a fun time at all. So, there's two types of trauma. There's, capital T trauma, which is big kind of knee-jerking events of physical abuse, sexual abuse, things like that. And I've had some shares of big T trauma, but lower T trauma is this slow burn kind of neglectful trauma and that's what I went through. So it caused a lot of problems, but I wouldn't go back and change anything because it's made me now who I am. So, that's what got me to the depths of the mired in addiction, per se.
That's interesting because I'm guessing that much of the world has this, what did you say, lowercase t trauma in the world, and we carry that in our hip pocket and manifests in these other things like addictions and everything. But, I've only had a chance to read, the sample on Amazon of your book, and whoa, your stint in the rehab and stuff was quite amazing.
Yeah. And I've been there, I've been to rehab 5 different times, and the book has a really fun opening story of my rehab experience with hip hop legend DMX, which is, I had to open the book with something really, really fun. It's going to get people. And I had a really comedic take on it. I used to do stand-up comedy back in the day when I was doing more drugs, because I found out once I kind of got sober, these atmospheres of comedy clubs and things just weren't really healthy for me. They were very triggering. And I had this anxiety that was just insane, that would not go away, that I relied on, especially I loved prescription pills. That was my drug of choice, where, like stimulants, benzodiazepines, opiates, and then alcohol. Those were my big ones. I've tried street level drugs and had my spats with all of them, but that's what really grabbed me with those things. So without those things, I realized I gave up on the whole comedy thing, and so, but now I get to kind of work that whole comedy side to me in, and it's really exciting. I get I see a lot of spiritual teachers out there, and I see comedians, and it's going to be very fun to kind of meld those two things together, and that's what I want to. The book is just the seed I hope to grow into a career tree. So I'd love to go on kind of tours and things. I can't be a straight up comedian because I want to make people laugh and think, and feel. Most people in comedy clubs just want to laugh. So I'm kind of creating a whole new thing. I want people that are interested in thinking and feeling along with laughing. So it's going to be interesting where this goes.
Well, I'm just curious, one more thing about the comedian thing. What led you to pursue the stand-up comedian career thing? Where did you just find out you had the ability to make people laugh with your sense of humor?
Yeah, I grew up, this emotional vacuum. The television was not my babysitter; it was a full-time parent, and so I grew up during the 90s, when there were so many funny movies coming out, just loads. Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler and Chris Farley and all these people, and I just and the SNL was kind of in a golden period in the 90s there with Will Ferrell and Jimmy Fallon and all these people, and so it was just, that's what I gravitated towards, because that's what made me feel good. So like before drugs and alcohol, it was comedy. And The Simpsons, another huge influence on me. Those 90s Simpsons are just amazing. And I just realized I could do voices, and I could imitate pretty well, and I could also make people laugh, which also made the pain go away. So it was not only, so I was getting, laughter coming in, and then I was making other people laugh, and that also was feeding me and giving me kind of relief from my pain. So that's where the comedy had come from. It was just, I love to laugh, and I love to make people laugh even more than I love to make myself laugh. Well, it kind of happens together.
Yeah, well, you can do voices. Maybe you can do voiceover for The Simpsons or South Park or something.
Yeah, I'm recording the audio for the book now, and there's a lot of places I get to do my voices. So it's going to be a different kind of audio book for sure. And it's, it should be out probably within the next month or so. I should be done with it, but it's really fun recording the audio. It's frustrating at one time, but like you got to make sure it's all perfect and everything. But getting the chance to, showcase my impressions and voices is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's very cool. Now, we're going to dive a little bit more into things, but one last thing I'm curious about. You're a big fan of rap music and culture. What is it about that attracts you?
Yeah, that's another one of those things. It's just a music that I gravitated towards in that time period, and it was also one of those things that made me forget I was in pain. It was, kind of in the 90s there. That's when rap really started taking off. And I was really big into basketball. Basketball and hip hop kind of go hand in hand together. So those things are big influences on my life, basketball and hip hop. So I like all kinds of music except for country. I'm just not into that. But I love all types of music and just anything. Recently, I've made this incredible kind of playlist that I walk around to with scores from movies because I'm trying to project myself in my own movie. So I'll go on a walk with scores from movies and Hans Zimmer and John Williams and Danny Elfman and these amazing people that score these movies and it puts me into the setting that I am in a movie and I am the narrator of my own movie. So I'm trying to Morgan Freeman my way through my life right now.
I think my soundtrack is like a spaghetti western like Clint Eastwood used to do. Or those soundtracks, which were pretty crazy. So you ended up with all this addictions and everything, rehab and all that, but I'm really interested to hear about this encounter with what you call source energy and the profound effect it had on you. What happened and how?
Yeah, that's the moment that everything changed, right? So I was at the time I was working with a shaman and I was kind of doing I was getting introduced to meditation as well as shadow work, which is one of the rungs. So there's rungs as opposed to steps. Steps moving forward is good, but moving up is better because the bird has a better perspective thing than the worm. So one of the first rungs is shadow work. I was doing a lot of that, kind of going through some false beliefs and asking myself, what do I believe about myself and about the world around me, and also doing meditation at the same time. So one day I just, after doing this kind of work, I was coming home and I wasn't even meditating at the time. I was stretching after a workout, and all of a sudden I've had panic attacks my whole life, but this was a bliss attack. It was an onset of just love out of nowhere, just out of nowhere. Drug free. There was no drugs at this time, so there's absolutely no scientific reason for this happening. Completely sober, so it kind of came on, and I just felt it was like, oh my gosh, something is happening, and it overcame me. And I went and I lied down in my bed, and for 3 hours I was in this state of complete bliss. Wow. And just total at peace with everything. And at the same time, I was getting kind of downloads and truths about the illusionary nature of things and how things work and how societally we're completely missing the mark. Like all these things, and I knew they were truths because of how I was feeling. So I was given this, that they weren't just thoughts. There was this extreme, amazing, blissful feeling, and and I realized my whole life I've been in airplane mode. My whole life. I mean, when you go and get on an airplane, you turn on airplane mode, and it blocks all the signals and everything from coming into your phone. So, a phone perpetually on airplane mode is not living up to its potential, and that's what I realized, and that's what it was for me. And I realized that the vast majority of people are as well in airplane mode, just going through life as kind of programmed things without really having any idea of who they are or what is going on. So that was the moment. And I realized that, if you were to, and explaining this is very difficult because, going up to, like if you were to take a fork and stick it in an outlet and experience that shock of electricity, try explaining that to someone that lives in the jungles of the Amazon. It's it's not easy to do. Like, an electric shock, they're not going to have any concept or idea. So me explaining it is difficult. But I realized that, explaining source energy is like explaining water to a fish. It's like, what do it's like, well, you're surrounded by this substance, and it keeps you alive, and it keeps you moving and going, and like explaining that to a fish is really difficult. And that's the same with source energy. It is a consciousness field that can be tapped into. This book came not from my ability to think. I'm not as nearly as smart as this book says I am. I'm a C+ student on a good day. I just recently figured out how to spell the word business. I'm not anything unique, but I tapped into this information field that is around us at all times, and realize that the brain is the receiver. There's no information or really anything stored in the brain. It's the receiver that you can tap into, this energy field that surrounds us at all time. And I realized I was like the fish in the pond, like the fish in this pond, or, and it's swimming around, and that's the world it knows. It's just this little pond. And then one day it gets caught by an angler and pulled out to this magnificent, insane world. There's lots of ponds, there's oceans, there's this whole other world that this fish never knew about. And that's this experience that happened to me. It's quite a shock, but an amazing, fantastic shock. I call it a lot of these people go through near-death experiences where they kind of go through something similar that, changes them. I didn't die or even was close to it. So this is my near-life experience. Like, this is what's coming. This is what's coming after life. And it's pretty magical.
Well, this experience of bliss or source energy, I guess many people call that like a Kundalini awakening. And that's almost become like a generic term for, spiritual awakening. But so you had this experience, and then you recently published this book, Sourcery 101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Why do you spell sorcery that way, and what are the 13 rungs?
Yeah, so I had this experience, and I was still kind of off and on and I had some really tough things happen. During this time period. I lost my mother, I lost my sister, I lost a close childhood friend. I had a former fiance leave me with my infant son and move across the country and just cut me out and just change her number and just gone. I haven't seen him in 2.5 years. So I had a lot of really hard things to go through. And this was causing, back and forth going between the drugs and going, so for a couple of years, the whole source experience happened about 4 years ago. But for 2 years, I was still kind of struggling. But in the last 2 years, I really have gotten things together and started my healing and just let myself start to heal. And this book is very meta in the fact that I am healing myself, writing these things. I'm getting these amazing things happening. So I'm writing and helping myself, but also creating something that I realize now that could help a lot of people. I mean, these concepts and ideas go back until the beginning of time. They're ancient, but I've just recycled them through humor and my subconscious and more pop culture, and made something that is relatable now so it has changed the world potential. I'm not saying going to, but and it's nothing new. It's just I just filtered it and made it something fresh. So sorcery is spelled with a U because, again, this is not about wizards and cauldrons and hooded robes and Eye of Newt, right? Like it's not that kind of sorcery. It is, SOURCE, so source energy, to use that to create a thriving new life, and I was just thinking about, how do I'm having all this stuff go through my mind, and it's like, okay, I can really make something special here. How do I do it? And that's when it kind of source guided me to these rungs, because I had been through AA, and AA is great on some levels. For me, leaving behind AA is essentially disguised Christianity a little bit, and I'm not saying anything new. And for me, leaving Christianity behind, it's a very paradoxical thing, part of leaving religion behind is what helped me have a true religious experience. So, but I used AA. It can be very helpful, but it can also be disempowering, because you're, powerless human beings separate from God instead of an absolute reflection of divine itself. So, but I use the 12 steps and kind of like, well, steps are good, moving forward is good, but moving up is better. So there's 13 for a very specific reason. And that is because 13 in America here is, for some reason, I kind of looked it up, but it's considered unlucky, to the point where there's no 13th floor on hotels here. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And I kind of looked it up, and supposedly it came from there was 13 people at the Last Supper, and Judas was considered the 13th person, so 13 is unlucky. So it just is a complete fallacy and crap. 13 is actually a number of the divine and will bring good luck and prosperity to those who embrace it. So part of sorcery is kind of looking at those beliefs. So 13 is a good representation of, looking at things that may not be true, things that we hold true that may not be true. So 13, and there's 13 of them, and I can't get into all of them over the hour, but I've got to memorize now. So shadow work, a call for inaction, surrender to serenity, health is wealth, emotional alchemy, comfort in discomfort, attention to intention, goats over sheep, follow your bliss, rose-colored contacts, instinct versus intuition, the chakra life, and assist leader. So there's 13 of them, and they're all important. They're kind of in an order. There's things that they're kind of in an order, but also there's the order of importance can be very subjective. Some things, for me, I was always big into health. So I don't need to focus so much on the health as wealth section, because that came naturally to me. So it's the level of importance is subjective. So, but there's 13 of them. They're all very interesting. I just can't talk about all of them in the whole hour, but.
Well, I have a feeling way too many people, more than we can imagine, really relate to you and your experiences. So I would highly suggest people grab a copy of Justin Shaw's book, Sorcery 101. I know I plan to get a copy here in a little bit, but I read something where you state the overuse of our phones and a hyper focus on the material world can be just as destructive to the soul as drugs and alcohol. Each specific symptom, such as addictions to gambling, food, shopping, sex, drugs, as well as most forms of what is referred to as chronic illness, boy, that's true, they all branch out from the same root cause, spiritual bankruptcy. What is spiritual bankruptcy?
Yeah, so yeah, here, especially in America, in the whole Western world, is we have a focus on people's symptoms. It is the focus is on the symptoms. What is, what is your addiction to? What kind of, if you have anxiety, you can take some pills. If you have depression, go see a therapist. If you drink too much, there's meetings for that. But if you use drugs, don't go to those meetings. Go to these meetings. And if you use certain drugs, then there's other meetings. And if you have a gambling meeting, if you have gambling addiction, well, don't go to the AA meetings. We've got other meetings. Everything is separated by symptom, and the fact is it's all one root cause, and that is spiritual bankruptcy. It can all be taken care of together, and it's just everyone wants to see separation. It's like, well, my problem isn't drinking. I don't, but that same person is can't put the phone down. So it's and phone addiction is rampant, and it's something that we still don't have. We're still like, what do we do about the phone addiction thing? So it's, and everything is separated. But the fact is, so it would be like the Western medicine kind of approach would be, if 100 people had lunch once a month and 90 of those people got sick every time, the Western medicine approach would be to dole out anti-nausea pills to 90 of those people every time, instead of just looking at the root cause, which is the quality of the food being served. So that's what kind of these approaches target. the thing, and it's nothing against doctors in Western medicine, because we have an amazing, like grasp on acute injuries, but we have no idea what we're doing in terms of chronic illness. No idea, not a clue. So, like if I fall off a roof and my arm is broken, acupuncture is not an appropriate thing to be doing. Don't send me to a chiropractor. So, you go to a doctor, you set the bone, but it is the body that heals itself. So what the kind of sorcery thing does is it emotionally sets the bone so our bodies and minds can start healing. But if you don't go to a doctor and set the bone, it's going to give you problems the rest of your life. It's never going to heal correctly. It's never going it's not going to be a good thing. And the thing with chronic illness is that Western medicine doesn't understand how to set the bone, to actually let the body heal itself. And that's what sorcery is about, like actually setting the emotional, spiritual bone and letting the mind and body heal itself, which takes time. And in this is a world of instant gratification. A lot of it's just like, well, if I can't have it now, forget it. And because I'm not getting out there, I'm not telling you this is going to work right away. This takes time. Healing takes time. You just like with the arm, you break your arm 2 days later, it's still going to hurt. So this takes time, but it works because I've been through it. And I now I've had so much joy in my life. I don't have anxiety anymore. Something like this would have caused me to like have panic and just not do it. But I've healed so much to where I enjoy being around people now, and I used to kind of a bit of a shut-in before, and I don't use drugs and alcohol. I don't feel a need to. I have joy now, which is very different than happiness. Happiness can come from all these things, these worldly things. There's nothing really wrong with them, sex is one of those things that can bring you happiness, but it's the attachment to it is what causes the suffering. So you can enjoy these things and have joy, but without constantly chasing happiness. Because joy comes from, joy is something you don't chase after, it comes from within. And so to have joy, which I have now, that's what I want to share with the world.
Well, you've nailed it on so many things. Humanities in most of humanities in the airplane mode, and then people have this spiritual bankruptcy. And as a student myself of A Course in Miracles, which shows that, the main cause of what we imagine as this life is that we fell asleep in a dream of separation from Source. And so that gives us the idea that we are separate, and that spiritual bankruptcy, boy, I'm so glad you wrote this, because it's going to help a lot of people, help them not to be bankrupt anymore. But we are talking to Justin Shaw. What an incredible story this man has, and so grateful to have him here. One more thing, just bouncing back for a moment. You had this career as a stand-up comedian earlier in your life, but now you classify yourself as a mystical comedian. Why?
I just made it up. I made it up. It's a term that doesn't exist, but because it's like I said before, like I can't, as much as I love people, making people laugh, I want to help people, and I want to make people think and feel too. So I can't go into a comedy club and just rip a bunch of like sex jokes, and it's not funny to me, and it's not fulfilling. So the pure comedy thing is in the back burner. But I use that, and the book is very funny. There's a lot of humor in it. I had to design it because I realized that our society, the fractured concentration of Generation TikTok, I kind of wrote it with them in mind. So I cycle through laugh, think, feel throughout the whole book. I try to concentrate it. Every moment I need people to either be laughing, thinking, or feeling. Mm-hmm. So I've designed it that way. But yeah, mystical comedian. I'm just getting started. Obviously, the book hasn't even been out for that long, and I'm still recording audio. But I'd like to do tours and stuff, and people that want to come laugh, think, and feel. I want people like that. And I want to be able to talk about things that I want to do, kind of stand-up philosophy, right? Like it's, kind of a mixture of the two. I can make people laugh, but I also want to make them think and feel. So that's that's where the mystical comedian thing comes in.
I said this before we started recording that, this life is too weird and crazy to take seriously. So let's laugh, right? And enjoy it. And you can be normal, but still be spiritual and, just enjoy life. One other thing I'm really curious about, you said you had studied at one point with a shaman, and you designed a system which you call a shamanic system of healing. What attracts you to shamanism and why?
Well, it's getting to that root cause. They recognize shamans have one foot in the visible world and one foot in the invisible, and recognize that the marriage of the two is where all the healing is at. So there's a lot of energy and things. There's a lot of focus on the chakras, which is one of the rungs. Balancing those out and just the energy healing aspect. Because I've been through it. I went through one of my rehabs was at this amazing place called the Sanctuary in Sedona, which is not far from me here up in from Phoenix, and it just was a really magical experience. And it was at the time when I really started healing, and that's when I really got introduced to all these terms as shadow work and the chakras and all these things. Like I had been awakened and had this, but I wasn't introduced into all these amazing things of like what shamanism is. And it's getting to the root cause. It is dealing with that spiritual bankruptcy and doing it naturally. I'm not trained in the shamanistic arts. I like to say I'm not a shaman, but I can be your Shaw man. Last name, I know, clever. But that's one of the things I'd like to do is get trained in the shamanistic arts, and I hope to, Sorcery 102 maybe will be that, be able to go off, and they have these trainings around the world called the Four Winds that kind of train people to be how to be shamans, and I'd love to go off and do that and get actually trained to be an actual shaman. Right now I'm the kind of healer that guides people to heal themselves. I don't really work with I don't know how they did a lot of things at this sanctuary place with, feathers and smoke and all these kind of, which seemed to really help at the time. So I'm very, very interested in learning more about that kind of stuff. But yeah, it certainly helped me in training with the shaman and just doing this natural, meditation is a huge part of sorcery and questioning things more, and that's all kind of part of this shaman route.
Well, I'm really glad you clarified that, because I think most of the world thinks when they hear the word shaman, they picture like Gandalf the Grey from Lord of the Rings or something, and all this strange man, or Harry Potter, that type of thing. But it's not. You nail it. A shaman is a medium between the visible and the invisible world, and it's very cool. What they do. Now, one thing, you use that word source quite a bit, and I do myself, but can we call this source God?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever, there's hundreds of different names for it, right? Like Allah, God, source, there's, it's what was made, gave Jesus his power. It's, it's in all the great spiritual leaders and teachers. It's part of it. I stray away from the G word because there's a lot of religiously, kind of traumatized people that's like so I stray away from that personally, but it is definitely God. I mean, even science has a name for it, dark matter. It is, I'm not a big fan of that name myself because dark matter seems nefarious, but I feel like I'm the dark matter. That's light matter, but it's just called that because we can't see it. But they're starting to realize there's something to this source thing, and there's every religion has a name for it, and it's whatever you want to call it. But it is the field. It is the unified field, the quantum field, the akashic field. All these are names for source, and it's the field of information, and it is there to be tapped into at any time, and it can truly. Geniuses are not separate or different from us. They just have better access to their subconscious. And once you get tapped into that, and then you tapped into the field, people, you're in that gamma kind of brainwave state that, in meditation, where it's happened to me several times, and that's these transformative awakenings in this gamma state. And I believe people in antiquity, like Jesus, like Leonardo da Vinci, like Nikola Tesla, like these people, I believe, tapped into this field of information and are able to stay tapped into it. I've experienced gamma, that bliss attack, that's the gamma brainwave state. And I've had several of those instances, but I believe people like this we're just able to tap into it all day, every day. Right now we're in kind of a beta state, we're in the waking state, we're in kind of mid-range beta, kind of talking, but I believe that these amazing, the Buddha and Muhammad and all these amazing, they were just tapped into this gamma brainwave state all the time, and we're just able to just be superstars, incredible people, and they're no different from us. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'd love to figure out how to try, but it is possible, and I just believe anything is possible. Truly.
I think for anybody who's a student of true spirituality is we understand that, since we are Source, we are connected to Source. Source created us, that we are light inherently, and that darkness, or the dark matter you talk about, can only obscure the light. It can't dissipate ever or obliterate light. And light will always instantly make darkness disappear. And if what people are following what you're doing, then that light should shine brighter and brighter and dissipate that darkness forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all reflections of, we are God. We are all God, everybody. So it's just like that, the kind of holographic nature of things. If you take a hologram, of a person, and you cut it in half, you're not going to get the waist down portion of the hologram. You're going to get a half-sized version of the big hologram. So I think our dimension is kind of almost like the hologram projected into a disco ball, and like all these, we're all little, just little pieces of the same source. And it's the ocean thing. When I had my experience, I felt like a glass of water being poured back into the ocean. And I think we're all glasses of water being separate from the ocean, and this thing we call death is just, we're just getting poured back into the ocean. There's nothing to be afraid of, believe me. I absolutely know that. So we are all reflections and pieces of that same source. And if more people knew that, we'd have a lot less problems in the world.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about spirituality, and one of the questions, the main question of this show is, why now more than ever are the people of the world awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening? What is your thoughts on this? Why now? Why now more than ever? It seems any time in history that humanity is awakening to all these beautiful things.
Yeah, and I think it is, people are starting to see through the I believe all religions are built on a cracked foundation. They're all real pretty houses that look good, and in my experience, I wouldn't talk about any other religion, but I was in Christianity for 10 years. And that is my experience with it, is that it was this really pretty house that helped me. The world is a world of gray, and a sorcerer sees the world for what it is. It's a world of gray. It is not black and white. Our minds want to put things in a black and white box, but the fact is the Bible and things like that are both helpful and destructive. It's both, and I think people are seeing through that cracked foundation of a lot of religions. For me, it did help for a while. But it is built on this foundation of fear and judgment. And when it came down to it, and one of the last things, my final straw, was all this bullshit programming that, like, if you're not going to church and you're not a Christian, you're going to hell. Well, my mother was not a Christian, and she never went to church. And my last week with her alive was extremely traumatic, because not of course her dying was traumatic, but now I had this whole other additional thing on top of it, that all these pastors had programmed me to believe that she was going to hell, and she was going to suffer the rest of her life. So instead of being like a shepherd to the afterlife like it would be now, and I'd be super excited and like, Mom, you're going to be out of pain, all this pain you've been in your whole life, and she had a year of just, deteriorating, and it was very horrible to watch. And I would have been excited for it. Instead, I'm just sitting there full of dread and fear, and wondering what's going to happen to her. And like, screw you guys for making me feel like you ruined the last week of my mother's death. And so I think people are starting to see through like the things in religion, and starting spirituality is found and religion is taught, and religion causes separation and spirituality unites. So I think that's what people are starting to see, and it is very refreshing to see. And I would like to see more of it. There's still a whole lot of division and a whole lot to come through, but we could have, a utopian society is very doable. People think it's impossible. It is doable. And there's something called the Maharishi effect, which, if you can just get 1% of a given society to kind of get on the level with the things that we're talking about here, and the sorcery and meditation and shadow work and all these concepts, 1% will completely change the construct of the organism. And the best example is diet soda is 99% water. And so, that 1% completely alters the liquid structure. Chimpanzees are 1% away from being human. 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but it will completely change. So if we can, let's not focus on everybody, but if we can just get like 1% of the American population to get kind of on the level, it would completely change everything.
Wow, that's cool. I haven't heard anybody talk about the Maharishi effect in a long time, but it's very valid, and it really is true. But, going back to religion, I think what attracts me to true spirituality and connection to source, as opposed to organized religions in the world, most of the organized religions, their basic mission is beautiful, but it's been controlled by man and changed with the paradigms of judgment and power and control of the masses, and that has completely distorted the message of most organized religions in the world. So, and for somebody like you and I, we both grew up kind of with a blank slate. I grew up in a household with no religion, never went to church, never talked about it. Our household wasn't an emotional blank like your family, but it gave me a blank slate to allow me to grab onto these beautiful concepts of light and love and truth and source, and expand it with myself.
No, it's a big shift. I like it, but yeah, I grew up in that, and I kind of passively went to Sunday school a little bit, but it was just more of this thing of you should go. And once I had to say, I just didn't. But it is that Jesus, I believe, but after I got sober the first time, that's when things I really was like, okay, well, Christianity is the way to go, because I was in a Bible study when kind of I had a small awakening, nothing near what I had, the real awakening, but it was just kind of a small, like, they prayed for me, and I kind of had this nice jolt of, like, okay, all right, I'll start going to church, and so, but now I realize, Jesus doesn't want followers, he wants peers. I don't believe that Jesus would even be on board with Christianity at all. It's, from what it looks like, he came, I believe his whole mission was to lead people away from religion, not create a whole new one. That's, when he was on the earth, the only people he couldn't really vibe with were the religious leaders. And I think if he came back, we'd have the same issue. All these pastors and things that think they're sure they know the deal, and it is in the Bible, and it's just gotten so watered down over time and controlled, and people understand that they can make people feel really good. Okay, well, now if you want more than that, you have to listen to what I say, and now what I say goes. And so it has been completely distorted, and the original, I think all the religion, the original, message is gone, because it's been taken with power and control, and kings and priests and all these, there's a lot of money to be made, there's a lot of control to be done, and so it's been kind of shifted and taken over by unfortunately by kind of power hungry people, and that's what we have now.
Wow, and that is why we are talking to somebody like you, filled with light and love and truth. We are talking, we're having a very enlightening conversation with Justin Shaw. This is pretty amazing. I wrote down a little note. I wanted to bounce back to we mentioned addictions come in all forms in the world that put us on autopilot, but you mentioned phone addiction. I'm beginning to think that nobody is capable of walking down the sidewalk without a phone in front of their face. I go running almost every day, and I'll be running in a beautiful park on a beautiful spring morning, and it's glorious out, and I have no earbuds in, and I'm saying hi to the trees and the birds and the flowers, and somebody comes walking by in this beautiful day with a phone in front of their face, oblivious to everything. But really, it is a global addiction, and it's not like I don't use my phone a lot. But wow, it's incredible. I don't know where we go with it.
Yeah, Source cannot. This is good. Source cannot speak. There's two types of focus. There's convergent focus and divergent focus. And if you're constantly on your phone, you're constantly in a convergent focus. Your attention is here. In meditation, you're able to take that focus and make focus on everything, and create a divergent focus. Now Source can actually speak to you, because if your focus, which this is we live in, we go from the phone to work to TV we are constantly in a convergent focus until you sit down and take meditation and kind of realize that divergent focus. Source will never be able to speak, because it can't. It's like you don't want to talk. So we have to get out of that, and to kind of explain divergent focus, it's as if like if you were to be sat in front of or stood in front of a brick wall with a blindfold on, take the blindfold off, all you're going to see is a blurry shade of red. You take a step back, you'll see a brick. You take a couple steps back, you'll see a few bricks. Take a couple steps back, you'll see it's a wall. And then maybe you take a few more steps back, and then you see that this wall is part of a magnificent castle. Now that blurry shade of red is now this insane castle, because you've taken some steps back. So that is the divergent focus, and that is what I'd like to see more of, certainly. The phones are a big deal.
And it's not only phones. I see everybody everywhere with these white sticks in their ear, which attach them in. And even audio, or when you're running or walking, and you have something always in your ears, and it's presents a cacophony constantly in your head, where I think people are afraid to listen to their own thoughts, and that's why they always have something in their ears or in their eyes.
Yeah, no, it is, and I'm one who likes, I love my music when I'm walking, and like I said recently, this is kind of movie scores, and I kind of get into it and walking. So, but yeah, no, even I certainly, I love to walk and run with earbuds in, because they kind of keep me going. But it is like I do walk my dog more. Like I'll walk my dog and just purposely leave them. I'm just kind of, especially in our morning walks, like not a lot of people around. It's just nice to kind of be checked out. So it is really good. And that walking, is a form of meditation. If we can kind of do it, there's a million ways to meditate, none of them are wrong, but that is a form when you just kind of check out and you just kind of go for a walk and you kind of with your thoughts. That's meditating. So, but yeah, if your attention is constantly converged, don't expect Source to ever talk to you, because you're saying, I'm busy.
And my running is my form of meditation. Same thing. You kind of check out while you're running and everything. But, well, we're going to wind up a little bit here. But, Justin, after living so much of your life addicted and out of control, how do you now spend your days? Are you constantly meditating? Are you doing workshops, or do you plan to do that? Are you coaching and doing speaking engagements?
Yeah, that's my focus. So the book hasn't been out long. Right now, I'm recording the audio. I'll probably start going back to. I was lucky enough to have kind of be able to take out a 401k this last year, and it's not a big amount, but it's been able to have me focus on the book, completely focus on a new career and starting that. So this year is just about creating awareness around the book, and then I want to, this is the seed to plant the career tree. So where it goes from here, I still plan on doing more, but my days are very busy and full, especially right now with recording the audio. I think I'll have, some more time to kind of be working, but I'm excited to see where it's going to take me, because these are things I want to do. It's big for one person to kind of handle all this stuff, but I know I have a set of things to do, and it started with this book. It's like people are only going to come see you if they know who you are. So this year is simply about creating awareness of the book and getting it out there. So it's on Amazon, but even if you can't afford it, you can email me and I'll send you a free ebook, because it's just about creating awareness about it.
Are you recording that audiobook in a professional studio, or how?
No, I'm recording it here. I've got my microphone, and I kind of shut everything out. And it sounds pretty good, but it's not in a professional studio. No, I don't have access to that. But it's good enough for now. If there's a chance to record in a professional studio, I'll do it all over again. But I purchased it. It's just kind of an online studio with the mic here and my headphones. So it sounds fine. I'm sure a real studio it would sound even better. But for now, this is what I got to do.
Well, that's awesome, and I'll look forward to hearing that. And so I encourage everybody to grab a copy of Justin Shaw's new book, Sourcery 101. I will have a link to that in the show notes, so you can do that. And Justin, what is your vision of how your book affects the world and the people who read it?
Well, I hope that it causes some. I know it can. It could change the world. I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm hoping it causes some change. And the main thing I want to get out of it is for people. First of all, it's very enjoyable. It's a very enjoyable read. Like, it's really fun to read. Laugh, think, feel. That's the whole way through. And I'm hoping it gets out to people, especially people that are really struggling and suffering like I was. And the whole point of it is to set the emotional bone, right? Like I talked earlier. Like, I want to. If I can be the doctor and set your emotional bone and let the body start to heal itself. And it's work, it's daily work. It doesn't happen all at once, but it's after you rewire your brain and that neuroplasticity of making new connections in your brain and learning things and changing. It is your personality that creates your personal reality. So if we start there, your personal reality can completely change, and that's what I really hope to bring.
And that sounds wonderful. That is sure what the world needs. So finally, what's the best way for people to connect with Justin Shaw if they would like to?
Yeah, so I just got back on social media like a few days ago. Like, literally, it was, I think, 3 days ago. I've been off social media for about 4 years. When I had my awakening, I just deleted them. And that was really good for the time, because like a horse wearing blinders, I seemed to run a better race at that time. But now I realize it's probably a good time to get back on and connect with people. So currently I only have one. It's Instagram, and it's Sourcerer with a U, SOURCERER _13 on Instagram. You can email me for a free ebook, which is sorcerer13 at gmail, no underscores, sorcerer13 at gmail. And then it's on Amazon. You'll have the link, but you can search on Amazon for the book itself. Sourcery 101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Just put in the word sorcery. For some reason, you can put in the sorcery with a U, and it'll be like the second one. There's a kid's book. It looks like a kind of a Harry Potter kid's book thing that spells it with a U, but that's the only one. If you put in Sorcery 101, it autocorrects it with real sorcery and sends you to a book that's apparently about becoming a better book. So
Amazing.
Keep that in mind. Justin L. Shaw. Yeah. You can search for my name.
All right, very cool. And Justin, what an absolute blessing to have you here on World Awakenings. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Loved it.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified Law of Attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now more than ever awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.